Now, before I introduce our final panel, well, the final panel is about the customer is king, and soon I will be introducing the chairman for that panel. But this panel is going to look at the changing consumer expectations and how B2C world needs to respond. But before that, we have a video from China. China wanted to participate in their summit today, and of course, not easy for them to be here, but we have a video from JD Flowers, part of JD Group in China. It's China's largest online retailer and is the biggest overall retailer, as well as the country's biggest internet company by revenue. So it's very big. The company has been officially listed on the US NASDAQ stock exchange since 2014. And we're going to see a video from them before I then introduce Marco, who will introduce his panel. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to AIPH and the China Flower Association for inviting Jingdong to participate in this conference. I am Zoe Wei, the head of Jingdong Flowers. And as a comprehensive service platform integrating the whole industry chain, Jingdong Flower and Gardening Department provides high style, high quality, and high efficiency gift flowers and green plants, gardening supplies, and other commodities for C-end users, garden design for home users, cut flowers and flower accessories of stable quality for terminal florists, and green plant rental, and other comprehensive services for B-end enterprises. And the main user group of Jingdong Flowers is mainly urban users, aged from 26 to 45, accounting for 61%, of which 67% are male users, with users mainly located in North, East, and South China, with East China accounting for about 30%. South China accounting for about 20%, and North China accounting for about 17%. With the rise of self-conscious economy and the herd economy, flower consumption is becoming a common consumer product in life. As the e-commerce and the career industries become more and more convenient, the flower e-commerce track is expected to break the 100 billion mark in 2022, and the average unit price of flower user in Jingdong has increased to 240 RMB, much higher than the industry's 120 RMB level. And from the upstream, we combine the comprehensive advantages of Jingdong's commercial flow and the logistics to help global flowers from flower fields to florists. And from the midstream side, we coexist and develop with every merchant in the industry's supply chain to create an omni-channel flower gardening ecology. And from the downstream, we rely on Jingdong O2O to empower over 300,000 offline forest terminals nationwide, to see users to connect online and offline, providing flowers to all channels and all types of customers with the highest quality service. While the offline brick-and-mortar florists remain as one of the important links in the flower industry, and the biggest challenge for Jingdong Flower is to improve customer experience and to enrich the supply chain and to introduce more international quality flowers. And Jingdong always insists on putting the customer first, and the customer is the foundation of everything we do. Jingdong values the customer experience, and the customer is God. We listen to and correct any needs and suggestions. In addition to paying attention to and satisfying customers' existing needs, Jingdong also focuses on observing customers' potential and personalized needs, and provides customers with services that exceed expectations through refined operations. And Jingdong Flowers actively responds to the group's call to listen to users' voices and is committed to building the most trusted flower selection platform for customers. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you to JD Flowers for sending us that video, and a significant company working in the digital consumer relations in China. So I'm not going to spend any more time. I'm going to introduce Marco van der Sar. Marco is the chairman of the Flower Council here in the Netherlands, and I will leave him to introduce his panel and to take on the subject now. So thank you, Marco.
Thank you. Thank you. I got the question to host a panel, the final one of the day, so that's a great honor, and good that you're all still here. But I also got the opportunity to talk a bit about, well, not important myself, but also the Flower Council of Holland. I already got to speak some people, and I don't think everybody knows the Flower Council of Holland, so I'll do a short introduction. And because there's a lot of things coming together after today, at the end of the day, with the Flower Council of Holland. First, very short about myself, Marco van der Sar, having my own independent company after starting in the industry in 2006, had various positions within Floral Holland, worked for Dumen Orange, and now helping a number of horti companies in especially the Netherlands. And one of the positions I am lucky to have is being the chairman of the foundation, the Flower Council of Holland, and today I'll be leading the panel discussion. For those who don't know the Flower Council of Holland, it's kind of an institute which is already existing longer than I do. So over 40 years ago, this was set up in the Netherlands with one main focus, the promotion of flowers and plants towards the consumer. And in essence, that's actually what the Flower Council is still doing. We are a foundation. We get our income via the sales of Floral Holland and Veiling Rijnmaas, which means that basically all sales from growers and traders via that system get an extra fee, which we use as income to invest in marketing and promotion. So the total budget that we have as a foundation is around 18-19 million euros, which we, well, invest with a team of 20 people to make sure that we keep flowers and plants top of mind at the consumer. And our focus is the main important export markets of the Netherlands. So we have offices also in the UK, in Germany, in France, to make sure that we also know what's locally happening and that we can anticipate that. So at the end, the Dutch Flower Council of Holland is happy when we can increase the purchase intentions of consumers. So we have a dedicated target group that we want to focus on, and we use a lot of assets. We create content, we use the different channels, we use influencers to make sure that flowers and plants stay top of mind with the consumer and make sure that we are in the top 3 gift market as a product group. We do a lot of generic communication, and we have media campaigns planned for flowers, for plants, but also for outdoor plants, in which we try to make sure that we reach the consumer with the right story. We do it online, we do it offline, basically with all means available, and we also learn a lot. It's not only about doing the promotion ourselves, because if you look at the key activities, the core activities of the Flower Council of Holland, we basically have 2 main activities. It's consumer communication, making sure that we reach the consumer and tell them about the power of our product. And secondly, it's also consumer insights. We spend significant amount of budget on research. We get a lot of insights from our consumer trackers. Actually, in the coming weeks, we'll be presenting a report on sustainability on consumer level in our main important export markets, qualitative and quantitative data on how could we act on sustainability as a topic in a smart way, not only as a Flower Council, but also as a grower, as a trader. So next to generic consumer campaigns. We are also investing in knowledge, in research, but we also do shopper activation. So together with growers, retailers and exporters, we actually do marketing on the shopping floor and online, which also gives us a lot of insights. We work with different brands in different countries. So it's a generic brand, so it's not branded from Dutch flowers only. It's a generic story towards the consumer. I can talk on this topic for hours, but we don't have the time. Just some examples about on the campaigns that you could see and which are available also. And of course, if you want to have more information, feel free to reach out to me, to the team, subscribe to our newsletter, but also visit our website, which also contains a lot of information in different languages to tell you more about the campaigns that we do, the research that we have, and all the other data that's available for especially the growers and the traders. My 3-minute pitch. I would like to go to a panel discussion, and 3 people have been assigned for this discussion. Sirekit Mol from Beekenkamp, Phil Paxton from Canada, and Michael Perry from the UK. Welcome. These mics should work. Before we start, maybe a short introduction. Michael? No, you had yours. No, but maybe a short introduction from your side before we start off.
Yeah, okay. You saw me earlier talking about social media and kind of marketing in the 2020s. Just to give you kind of a rough outline, I worked for Thomson & Morgan, mail order plant company for 20 years, so lots of kind of marketing insight there, new product launches as well. I've now been freelance for 5 years, creating content using those kind of industry connections and also my access to the consumer as well. So yeah, that's a little snapshot of me.
Thank you, Michael. I am Sirekit Mol. I work for Beekenkamp Plants. Beekenkamp Plants is a breeder and young plant producer in pot and bedding plants. I am currently the head of commerce.
Hi there, my name's Phil Paxton and I'm originally from the UK but emigrated to Canada in the late 1970s, and I started a business shortly after I arrived in the landscape construction area, and bridged out from commercial landscape construction to residential design build, commercial maintenance, and then got into the wholesale tree nursery business, and currently operate a tree nursery in Calgary and a retail garden centre.
Thank you very much for that introduction. We prepared some statements, some dilemmas, some, well, I'm just going to show them. They're all related to the topic of today, but also towards customer is king. So looking more at the consumer now, but also in the future. So I'm just going to show the first one and then ask your opinion or your statement. So the statement is, in 10 years from now, our physical and virtual reality is interchangeable. Linking into the meta presentation, I guess, a bit. Physical stores are no longer needed to see, feel, smell the products, since consumers can do that all online. So we don't need shops anymore, we can all do everything online with our products.
Who wants to go?
Who wants to start with this one? Do we agree or do we not agree?
I think Michael wants to start.
Yeah, I don't mind. It was difficult because when we were watching this kind of meta universe earlier, I was kind of sitting there and thinking, oh my God, this looks so weird and futuristic, and I don't know if I want to be a part of it. But then I was kind of thinking, no, I need to kind of not have that attitude and be more open to it, because, you know, 10 years ago, we didn't understand the benefits of Instagram or social media, and it might have seemed like something that was really alien. So I think we should embrace it. But I feel like the product we work with, flowers and plants, is something that you can't experience through that world. And it's probably unique to a lot of other products, because you do need to touch it. You do need to smell it, taste it in some instances as well. And I think when you look at this, and, you know, mail order already has difficulty of meeting expectations, because, you know, it's much better to go there and select the plant yourself always. So I don't know if this would completely win. I think just like social media, it can be an addition, but would not be that strong, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel that, yeah, as a breeder, you want to create something that will give you emotion to the consumer, but not only to the consumer, also to your customer, to the retail, that they can make a story about it. And when I saw today the metaverse, I thought like, you can just like create something what you really want to see yourself. And that might be also a kind of a difficulty within our industry, at least our part of the industry. How about you?
Well, great question, Mark. I would say never. So the metaverse is pretty exciting. I've seen probably, I would say 3 or 4 serious trends in the 40 years I've been in business. And so I'm sure I just never say never. Having a 14-year-old grandson who introduced me to things like Roblox and the metaverse, I think there's an opportunity there. But I think I'm with you in many ways, that our product is, I can't believe how much time I spend with the customer and how important each of those customers' interaction is, not only with what we're offering, the knowledge we try and share, but I think mostly they really want to see the product. And that is so experiential that I'm struggling to actually see that in our future.
But maybe there's a few kind of elements, like maybe garden design or kind of someone designing their patio with plants, where they can rely on the metaverse for that, but then they flip to real life in order to buy the plants, in order to experience the plants in real life. So it could work like that. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You just said you saw 4 main trends that occurred in your kind of career. Yeah. It'd be really interesting to know what you feel they were, because I think we can learn from that as well.
Oh, what? Is that part of this? You want to do that?
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's more than fine.
It's so interesting that you said that. So yeah.
Well, you know what? It's not necessarily plant-based. It's so I would say some of the things that I've really noticed is the introduction of technology to improve the speed at which we do business. But I think it's also how technology in many ways has replaced the hands-on that is currently a really difficult place to find. So, you know, one of the initiatives that we started probably about 20 years ago was integrating people and then the process and then the technology to that. And all of that sort of wrapped together in a communication style that changed so much for our business, it wasn't even funny. So the 4 big trends would be around understanding probably some of those things, and at a more granular level, there's lots of things that have changed so many ways, just in the way we package plants, how we move plants around. So yeah, I could probably go on for too long, but we have time.
Sorry, Mark.
That's not your question.
Yeah.
No, but I think the conclusion is, let's say 10 years from now when we sit here again at the next Floriada, I guess, we will see, but you don't believe that I think we all say that the physical store will still play an important role, and this can maybe be an add-on for the experience in the buying process. And maybe with Tosca's presentation, we will have the metaverse in which we can design plants and then they can actually create them digitally before they can be shipped online. Oh, okay.
I'd be scared if the metaverse could probably create something that we might not be able to deliver.
Well,
and that would be a fear, wouldn't it? That all of a sudden you were able in the metaverse to be able to buy something and we couldn't actually in reality deliver that. That would be a concern for me as in delivering an experience for the customer.
But I think Nike and Adidas are now investing in all digital design studios to sell on Roblox, Fortnite, metaverse, and there could be a business for plants maybe if you have a good brand, but we'll see.
Fair comment.
We have some other ones. Also more from a retail point of view and how we see the retail developing and acting. Like in general, are we still the team data side or are we team intuition? Like how are we actually in our industry making decisions? And what do we see happening at retail level or at company levels in line with the presentation we had today?
I'll take a stab at that first. I think the big takeaway for me listening to everyone's presentation today is how important data is. I don't think there was one speaker, including yourself, that didn't mention, you said, don't overthink it. I remember that really well, but you did say make sure you're making decisions based on data. So I'd say data is absolutely vital, big and small data. But if we lose, I believe, the intuition of the people that we work with and the customers we serve, that interaction, and many times our suppliers, if we lose the intuition of that interaction, I think we lose the personal touch, which could potentially be dangerous. I think it's a bit of both, Marco.
Yeah, I agree on that. It's a bit of both. I must admit, I'm working quite a bit on intuition. Of course, we are looking at data, but when you look at the consumers, they really want to understand where the plant is coming from, where it's gone through. So they actually want the data as well. So that forces us as well to work more with data.
I would say I echo that a bit, but then I'm thinking about what I do in my own work, and I don't really follow the data much at all, because I'm very much going with the intuition of what the trends are, what kind of is topical at the moment as well. And also, like I said in the presentation, never being afraid to pivot if I need to as well. So then if you're following the data too much, you don't allow yourself to do that. So you have to stay fluid. So I'd say data, my 20%. 80% intuition.
But I do feel that as an influencer, and what Daryl said as well, you have all kind of different music, what you like, and you have a little bit of more.
It seems like we're on the same page on this one also. It feels like we say we are team intuition, but we are using more and more data to get support from that and fine tune and maybe get different decisions done, but at the end, if we must choose, it feels like we're still in team intuition. Not saying if it's bad or good, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
A concrete example for me would be, Marco, I actually was looking through some information about where our customers were driven from. We were getting that data. And before I actually looked at the data closely, I would have guessed something that was driving our customers was not as important as it actually was. So my intuition was telling me one thing. When I looked at it, that became our number 3 driver of customer traffic, which surprised me. So I think there is a place for both.
The data can help you with the blind spots.
Sure.
Okay, let's go to a level deeper. Possession is old-fashioned. Most consumers and businesses will grow, exchange their products instead of buying them. So we don't go for ownership anymore, we go for growing ourselves, exchanging products, and nobody owns anything anymore. Is this something relevant for the future for our product?
I'm not quite sure how to take that one, because we've just been talking about social media the whole day, and how people want to show to the world how they are, what they own, what they know. And also on top of that, I still have to pay my taxes, and I cannot do that in exchange with flowers. So.
But yeah, I would say absolutely. I mean, we talk about the plant ownership, the plant parenthood as well, which is then owning the plant and kind of that being a part of your family, something you're responsible for. So I don't think this kind of sharing economy that we talk about here really can apply to horticulture. Maybe with tools.
From a sustainable point of view, like throwing away your orchid or growing it again and again over years, like you see a niche group of people growing their own and keeping them alive as long as possible. Is that something that is niche, or will that become more standard, you think, in the coming 10 years?
I'll take a stab at this only to stimulate some debate. In a vertical world where people are spending less time in single family or smaller multi-family dwellings, I've actually felt in the vertical world there is a place for this, and especially in the balcony world. And currently in Calgary, I would say perhaps Calgary is maybe a little bit out of the European way, but the idea of sharing plants, economically sharing plants, and as plants go bigger, exchanging them for smaller plants, and I'm talking in the caliper world now with balconies, I thought there was a business opportunity there. Surprisingly, the building owners were not very receptive to that idea. So there's probably a bit of education around that piece that needs to happen, but I think there's a big opportunity in the future, and maybe a topic for you.
Yeah, maybe not sharing plants, but sharing plant spaces maybe, like obviously community gardens, and there's There's a new app that I saw advertised on Instagram the other day called Allot Me, I think it is. And it's like where you can actually rent not allotment space, but other people's gardens. So maybe it's like Airbnb for gardens, basically. So if you've got a garden you don't want to care for, or maybe it's too much for you, maybe someone elderly, then you can actually kind of allow someone else to kind of rent that. And that is where the sharing economy kind of works for that, perhaps. So, yeah.
Most likely not the standard in 10 years, but maybe we'll see some more initiatives popping up. Okay.
I would hope it is. I don't know that we actually are going to get the building owner people to actually understand that concept of moving plants around within a building, the disruption to things like elevator spaces. And I think, but there is an opportunity. I think it's a kind of Saturday morning thing that could become cultural.
So someone rents a plant for like 2 months or something and come on.
That wasn't my vision, but that could be. I'm actually thinking something differently. So think of something like a plant that is put in a 15-gallon pots on somebody's balcony for 2 years, and all of a sudden it blossoms white and has a fruit. And it's been there for 2 years. It's starting to get a little bit on the big side, and they have the ability to take that back to the nursery and exchange it for a smaller plant. But this one's a pink blossom and doesn't have fruit. Just an idea like that. So, but the idea of moving a plant in and then taking a plant back out again requires a lot of cooperation for the other 50 or 60 people that live there. So you have to introduce things like gardening days, and currently in sort of vertical spaces, I don't think there is those types of initiatives that I'm seeing anywhere in our marketplace. I believe that probably Europe is more advanced in that regard for that kind of an idea. So it's just something we've been playing with.
Nice, thanks. Next statement. Companies that do not have a holistic vision on ethics and sustainability for 2030 yet, that is applicable to their entire chain, will be cancelled by the consumer. So how hard will they play this?
A comment that was made today was sustainability is table stakes. You can't play at a roulette table unless you have money. And sustainability is like table stakes at a roulette table, and somebody else, those are my words, not the speaker's word, but the person said sustainability is table stakes, but it's accountability that matters. I actually wrote that down in inverted, like in capital letters, because I thought the accountability piece was often missed as it relates to sustainability. And I think it's probably missed because we talk about it, but oftentimes there's maybe not an audit system to prove, but the marketplace is that audit system. So I hope that what you've written there is real, but in the use of water and pesticides and fertilizer, it can be a challenge. That's a quick answer. It's a deep topic though.
Yes, it is very much a deep topic, and I find this one actually also a bit difficult to answer, because you know what is actually sustainable, and what is the definition of that? We all have different views, but when we come to the consumer, what is indeed the promise? What will they get for the product? And if it's completely, if this is the complete package, will the consumer then have a choice anyway?
But I think while the consumer's got a choice, they might not necessarily go for the sustainable option because that's going to be ultimately more expensive. So it feels kind of on some level unfair to the consumer to have them make the choice. Surely we need to be at a level where everything is sustainable and the consumer doesn't have to make that choice. They don't have to feel guilty about what they haven't chosen, but what they're choosing is ultimately the best option, but that's the only choice available. Surely that's the way to do that. But maybe we're not there yet, but like when you still give people choices, they're probably still going to go for the cheapest, not because of their morals are wrong, but because they can't afford anything else.
And who's the biggest driver in this change? Who's forcing this to happen? Is it the front runner, the companies that actually...
Well, the industry needs to, really.
But who's the industry?
Well, us. And because we always put so much responsibility on the consumer to choose, but we can make them choose. We have to make them choose to help them with this.
And I think governments will also push for this. I think in 2025, certain companies with certain turnover need to have transparency and goals on sustainability instead of only in their financial reporting. So that will also maybe get some transparency into the chain. But will they actually cancel will the consumer actually cancel a company or a product based on not having a view, or is it just something we think it will happen.
But surely if the government is pushing it, there'll be a case where there are no companies that are offering the alternate anyway.
And should we be afraid as an industry at the moment on this, or is it something that's going to happen and we should be prepared?
So the answer is we should be prepared. And I think the answer is doing internal audits on our business around how we're achieving the goals of whatever the goals may be. There are industry goals, but there are also government goals, and then there'll be public or social goals around getting to potentially looking at things like net zero. Things move all the time, but if you've got if you can benchmark yourself against a score, the answer is we should always try we should endeavour always to try and improve. It's moving pretty fast though as it relates to energy usage, for example, to get to a net zero score. And we haven't really adopted that side of the ledger yet. But it's funny how many people have got to say a carbon tax, but there isn't on the other side some sort of carbon credit that's being used at a universal level that will help us. So it's a loaded question, but I would hope we're always moving towards a scorecard that is better than the previous scorecard.
I also think that it has been already mentioned previously today, our industry is doing already so much on SDGs. And I think we should show that more.
Just as a little addition, it was quite interesting. I was at the Horticulture conference in the UK, Birmingham last week, and Mark Gregory, who's a designer who's worked at Chelsea for like 30 years or more, he said he thinks that kind of in the next 5 or so years, the gardens will have a carbon rating, which was quite interesting. And also plants might start to have a carbon label as to how efficient they are with, carbon. So that was a nice little angle as well.
Do we have a certain company already that is front runner on this topic in our industry?
Well, I'll answer that one in a second. That carbon rating number is actually quite interesting because are plants efficient on the carbon scale as it relates on a plant by plant basis to make it better? Or is it better that a plant would have something like a clean air number? Which might be more important to the consumer than that actually. If all of a sudden you get this plant's a 1 and this plant's a 4 on the carbon scale, what does that actually tell you? But if you say this plant perhaps is a little better on clean air, that might be more important.
But also the plant, there's another, it needs to be good for wildlife as well, potentially. So,
And now I've lost the other question. What was that?
Who are the front runners in our industry in this topic?
I wouldn't have a comment on that, I'm sorry.
I don't know enough of credentials.
Hard question.
I feel
it's a shame we can't say instinctively though, isn't it?
Well, I feel that the vegetable side of the industry is quite intensely busy with that.
Loaded question, Marco.
This is maybe in line with the thing we already discussed. I think we can skip that. So 10 years from now, sustainability is a must-have, not a nice-to-have for the happy few. So government and consumers are all demand local grown and distributed plants and flowers. Maybe the last topic can be interesting to elaborate a bit on.
But I feel with a lot of that, just to jump in, it's kind of we're expecting consumers to choose and do this and that. We're putting the responsibility on them when really we should be guiding it or dictating it even more and being unafraid to do that.
But the local grown topic, how big will that be? How for flowers it may be different than for plants, but will this stay a topic in the next 10 years? And what's the definition of locally grown?
Well, in Canada, there's a push to having a grocery code of conduct. And what was interesting in that grocery code of conduct is that there was a struggle to get agreement on what that might look like. And we still haven't got there yet, but what's fascinating on consumables, what they called the edibles or consumables as it related to our segment of the industry, they started to use a word that was kind of new, which is, is it perishable rather than is it edible? And if it's perishable, there seems to be a push in Canada, and I can't speak for Europe, for this whole locally grown, locally consumed. I remember that book that was written a few years back now. It's actually written by a Canadian. I think it was called The 100 Mile Diet, was it? And so local became quite it became a buzzword. So many times you'll see there'll be national standards, but then they're locally interpreted, and places do have initiatives that go in certain directions. So I think there is a desire to buy and consume locally. So I would say the answer to that would be, from a Canada point of view anyway, I think there is a push to a lot of locally grown and locally consumed product, especially on the perishable side. As it relates to the non-perishables, I think there is still a lot of mobility. But that's not our game, is it? We're in the perishable game.
Any other comments on locally grown or?
I'll just jump in and say, I'm looking at this from a kind of consumer, kind of home gardener point of view, but we have like British cut flowers as a big movement, and flowers from the farm do a lot of good kind of social media, and kind of like people are really into buying British grown flowers. But I'm just sitting here thinking that hasn't spilled over into British grown plants at all, which is, I don't know.
In the UK, I think there is a code of conduct, or they're working on it. And yeah, when is something locally grown? You know, how long needs a plant to be?
But within the country.
Within the country as well.
Yeah.
But at the end, when there is like a sticker on the package, on the plastic sleeve, and people are in the shop and they feel maybe better that they buy locally grown, that they can support.
I just wonder if there needs to be an initiative like Flowers from the Farm, which is great for the flower market, for the plants market in the UK. That would be cool. Just looking at it from UK perspective.
Yeah, you see the same discussion in France. I was there 2 weeks ago, but the question for locally grown, like if you go to Paris, the south of France is farther away than Alsmeer.
Yeah.
So what's the definition of locally grown? But that's more on the marketing side. So the product-driven campaigns talk about your product and the benefits are history. So purpose-driven campaigns that create opportunity for organizations to show support to the communities they serve have the future. So it's not about the product, it's more about the contribution of the company towards the society. Is this something big, or will this become something big, or will it stay product-driven?
I think just quickly, well, if it's a product with a purpose, that's surely even better, because then you're selling the product, but you've got ultimately great reasons to sell it, to benefit all.
Do we have examples of those?
I think while you guys talk.
Well, I know that an African farm used to have, let's say, a social program in which every sales would contribute to a local hospital, and it was like a big thing in the German retail market.
I have an anecdotal story I'll share with you, is that lots of people sell roses. And I asked somebody this story today, so I'm repeating it from somebody in the crowd. But anyway, it happened in Canada, and lots of people sell roses, and lots of roses will be, stellar, and some will be sort of mediocre, and some will be less stellar. But the story around this particular rose, it had a great name, and the name was called Never Alone, and it outsold many other roses that had been previously on the market. The Never Alone rose in Canada outsold. I would be lying to say it was more than any other rose, but it was a really successful rose, and it was launched at a time where people were worried about being alone. So it was causal in the sense that the marketing behind the Never Alone rose it wasn't that the rose was great, it was a good rose, but it also had a great name, and it had a feeling about it. So the Never Alone rose sold really well. So I think if you can create that, if you can link the two, you're onto a winner. That's totally for sure. If you can accomplish that. The challenge is, can you keep repeating it? And well, not everyone wins in the stock market each year.
Definitely.
And I would say, in my experience, selling through the TV and mail order, you need to have a story to sell a plant, and even better if we can flip that to a meaningful story.
Sure.
Of a purpose, which shouldn't be too difficult, because people are already there. The audience is already there to buy a plant with a story, so they're already ready.
Yeah, we are, for instance, selling poinsettias with a fair trade mark, and it's also kind of an emotion. It needs to be transparent, and but it's still also a little bit of a challenge as well to to make sure that the people got that message. And you know, fair trade from coffee beans and chocolates, and in the plants, we see that needs to grow still.
And the willingness to pay from consumers for that kind of stories is there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel that the consumer would like to pay a little bit more for the end product if it makes them feel good, if they can feel that they can add something to the farmers, because that is where the money is going. We need to create more value for the plants throughout the whole supply chain.
I think there just needs a little bit of extra PR, or maybe like, you know, some influencers to kind of get behind it and putting that across, because there's so many products out there. There's a lot of noise and a lot of different messages. So when there is such an important one, we should be talking about it specifically.
Absolutely.
Let's go to the final one. No, I like this one, especially regarding the meta one. Youngsters distrust messages on the online meta platforms, even though relying on it, especially from corporates and politicians. Influencers should be the ones telling the corporate story, so those are the ones that we should trust. Would you agree, Michael?
I think it could be an influencer that has a close relationship with the corporate brand, like we've seen with Justin and Daryl this morning, or someone within the brand who is a good spokesperson, who's really relatable and kind of softer side of the corporate company, as it were.
Yeah, we all look for, doesn't matter what bit of the supply chain you are, we all look for kind of an external ambassador who really supports your company or what you're doing. So, yeah, don't know. How about you?
I hope that guy who spoke earlier is not in the room. The meta guy may have gone, but you know, looking at that, they're trying really hard. Their message, you could see their message was about trust. You know, do you remember that one slide when he talked about trust a lot? And in some respects, maybe there is a loss of trust there. But the funny thing about using social media to connect, in the end, the relationship that you get with your customer is not necessarily directly to Meta or another company like Meta. It actually, in many cases, is one-on-one. And that relationship is built on, you know, hopefully some honesty, some loyalty, and for sure, trust. So the Meta connection is a funny thing, because it's a connection that you use to make that connection. Then after that, customer by customer and business by business, you're actually building that on a slightly different relationship that isn't necessarily reliant on Meta. So yeah, it's a difficult question, I would say, if you just specifically related it to that, the social side. I hope we never get to a place where we stop relationship selling and we lose that direct one-on-one relationship with our customer. I hope we don't get there, Marco.
Final one, especially for Sirekit. In 10 years from now, breeders will sell directly to the consumers in an online marketplace where supply and demand will find each other directly. So there's no link between product and consumer anymore.
I may have just answered that. Yeah.
Well, first of all, we also talked about brands, and everybody would like to have their own brand into the market. Every single bit of the supply chain wants to show, what they do well, how they can sell the product. As a breeder, as you know, it takes a little while to have a product on the market, and they are our babies. We've been looking at our plants, some of the breeding, for more than 5 years. So we see them kind of growing up and developing. And of course, you are proud. I mean, you're proud of your child when you show them to the world and say, like, this is mine. So it got to do with pride. However, I don't think links will disappear. I do think every bit of the supply chain might have like a different function or responsibility, but we all need each other. We all need to work together, but also understand our place within the chain as well.
I think sometimes maybe the chain is a little bit too many parts in the chain, but I think the chain is still really important because actually it's almost like you're translating a message down the chain, because the breeder is ultimately going to be a little bit too techie to sell to the consumer. So that's why you then need, like the buyers who then know the customer intimately, kind of on a day-to-day basis, more than the breeder would be able to. But they also need to feedback what needs to be created as well. And then almost then coming through to people like me that then know how to communicate it to the audience, the people at home as well. Because, the breeder has a function to create the plant, which is reliant on the feedback from us further down the chain, but I don't think they're ultimately the person to then communicate it to the people all the time, if you see what I mean. So I think all the chain is still very relevant because they prepare the story for the consumer.
As Tosca was also explaining before, your product needs to go through the whole supply chain, so you need to understand what a lack is or what people want.
And not one person can do all of those different roles, and so we have to respect the different parts of the chain because they all offer something that is really relevant and making that story complete for the customer and delivered in the right way.
You agree?
Yeah. I mean, 10 years is a very short time in especially in a caliper growing, the life of a caliper tree. It's a short period of time. So getting to 2032, it seems like I often am already thinking in 2032 with what we're doing now. So I'm struggling to answer that question, that it will be that much different.
So no revolution for the value chain?
Well, I would say in the value chain there will be a revolution. Maybe in my specific situation, maybe not so much. But yeah, I mean, one thing for sure about business is that change is real, it's constant, it's never ending. And if you don't adapt to change as quickly as you can, you get left behind real quick. So you have to be aware of that.
I think that's a nice way to end this panel discussion.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions from the audience? Jan? Yes?
I repeat the question. What would have been the answers to your questions if the panel was between 18 and 25 years old?
What was his question?
I'm 21, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I love you guys.
My driver's
but
license.
I miss the link to the next generation. Another thing what we learned in Germany is that generation I just mentioned, from 18 till 38, is buying less but a better quality. And they have other expectations as the people who are here in the audience. So there is a mislink between the future client and what we are discussing. And I hope in next events we could make a double panel, future and what is today. And I think what is the future, sometimes they have too high expectations and we are guessing. The whole discussion today was guessing, and I understand that because I'm also guessing. So I invite you to talk to the Z generation. Thank you.
Good suggestion, thanks. Any other suggestions or questions for the panel? If not, oh sorry, I see one.
It wasn't really a question, was it? It was a statement.
Yeah, hi. My name is Sylvie Mamias from Union Fleur, International Flower Trade Association. Thanks a lot for this discussion. I share the point of view that was just expressed. In particular, the question on, now I can't remember which one it was, but I do think that the younger generation in particular will look at everything they buy through the sustainable glasses. That's inevitable. On that point, I wanted to make more comments. On one of the slides, you kind of associated sustainable with local, which I think is something that needs to be nuanced. Like, I don't think there's a complete equation, between being sustainable and being local, and that's something that we always try to put into perspective. Local doesn't necessarily say anything about the sustainability of a product. So I think it's very important for this industry to make sure that we talk about environmental performance, for example, or social contribution, and make sure that we make the distinction between local and sustainable. I don't think it's right to equate the two. So it was more comment. Thank you.
Yeah, good comment. Thanks. I would like to thank the panel.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.